Good morning. So my name is Joonas Lehtinen.
And I'm Marcus Hellberg.
And today we are streaming webinar from California. Normally we are streaming from Finland, from our studio from there, but as we are living and staying here in California with Marcus, we decided to do a webcast from here.
Yeah, I was going to wish you all welcome to sunny California, but unfortunately it's really cloudy out today, so yeah.
Yeah, actually, I thought I could even kind of show how we expected the weather to be. This is Carmel Beach nearby, but the real picture outside of the window is a bit different at the moment.
So anyway.
So let's get started. What we want to kind of discuss today is basically give a brief introduction to Vaadin, discuss the basics, discuss the fundamentals, what is Vaadin. Then Marcus will be giving a brief live coding demo, how to kind of build Hello World type of application or something like that.
Yeah, basically show all the possible demo effects you can accomplish in 15 minutes or so.
And we'll kind of show this new Valo theme a bit. It's a cool new thing that we just released last Tuesday. Discuss a bit how Vaadin is related to GWT and what's new in Vaadin, what has been happening in the past year or two. Then Marcus will promise going to show a quick brief to our tools as well.
Yeah, basically just show what we offer on top of the framework to kind of help you as a developer.
Yeah, to say this in other words, Vaadin is fully free, so Marcus is also kind of giving a peek what we actually are, how we are kind of paying our accommodations and food. And of course, in the end, we have a lot of pointers how to get started with Vaadin. And I hope you kind of send questions during the webinar. So you can tweet your questions with Vaadin hashtag, or you can go to our Tori forum thread and just post your questions over there. So that's basically the thread where you are probably looking at this webinar right now. So first of all, Vaadin, it's a Finnish word meaning female reindeer. So the team is originally from Finland, so we wanted to kind of choose a word that was somehow connected to Finland. I know reindeers have nothing to do with frameworks, but then again, it's a cute animal. In real life, this is a framework for building rich applications, rich web applications, and with this, I think that it's fair to say that the focus is on the word application. So this is not for websites. You wouldn't want to build a, let's say, consumer website with this. For that, you might kind of want to take a look to Spring MVC or AngularJS or something like that.
Yeah, what I'm usually a rule of thumb that I've been telling people is that if it was something that just a few years ago you probably would have written it as a desktop software, then Vaadin might be a pretty good kind of fit for that. But basically rich applications with very...
Yeah, something that your users would be comfortable to use for hours each day, not just kind of browsing through. But in the end of the day, Vaadin it's just bunch of UI components like Legos that you can use to build your application out of. So buttons, trees, grids, and so forth. And you just put these together and your application, instead of kind of working on a kind of low level on a DOM elements and such, you can use high level UI components. There are many frameworks out there. What I think makes us different is that we have a really strong focus on developer productivity. So we really work hard to minimize the number of code lines you would have to write for your application. And at the same time, we want to give as rich user experience as possible for the end users and try to kind of combine these two things together. Of course, when you have a focus, you have to do compromises outside of the focus, and I think this is a good thing. Then you can kind of really bring something on the table that other frameworks can't. So in a way, you could kind of see that Vaadin, it kind of abstracts away from HTML. It kind of brings Java APIs for HTML, for building rich apps on top of HTML platform. But it doesn't mean that you are kind of HTML would be hidden, we have been making sure that whenever you want, you can go through the abstraction pretty easily and kind of modify anything on your application. But most of the time, you want to kind of be on a more abstract level to be more productive. So let's discuss about 3 kind of key ideas behind the framework, and I think these define the framework quite closely. So the first one is that everything is a component in Vaadin. We have 3 kinds of components. We have UI components, data components, and themes. So UI components themselves, I think we should kind of show a demo of this. This is cool demo.
We actually just launched a new sampler last week, I believe.
Yeah.
Or a new version of the sampler would be a better.
Yeah, we have had some kind of kit sensing application showcasing the components for 10 years or so, and it has been rewritten and redesigned many times. So that's the newest edition. Over here you can kind of just dive through different kind of UI components. Let's say, hey, you take a date picking component from here, and you can try different dates and kind of see how this interacts. And if you like it, you can kind of take a look of the source code, how this have been implemented, and kind of see the code right away, what it takes to kind of put this component on the screen. You can also kind of tune the component, so you can say that, hey, I don't want to show minutes over here, I want to just show, let's say, days, how it looks like. Maybe I want to use some strange locale instead of the defaults. What would be fun? Bosnia-Herzegovina. Okay, I cannot pronounce these. But in any case, you can kind of tune the component and try these out, and then kind of go from component to component and try which are the kind of most important features for you. So this is both a learning tool as well as kind of...
And also one thing I'd like to point out that there are links to the relevant parts in the documentation from each component, which really makes it a good place to start. Exactly.
So this basically tries to answer what Vaadin can do for you. What are the features over there? Of course, this is pretty far away from a typical Vaadin application. Typically, you don't not kind of building applications like this, where you are just kind of flying through the UI components. So more typically, what you would be doing is, maybe I'll link over here, is the application like that. It's kind of app that occupies the full browser window, where you have a kind of login, you have a lot of UI components on the screen, different kind of dashboards maybe some interactive graphics over there, and typically kind of data grids are quite dominant in Vaadin application. You want to show a lot of data on the screen. So this would more kind of look like Vaadin application, where there is a interactivity through drag and drop, or a bit more how you say complex layouts. I don't want to say complex layouts because it looks like complex, but anyways, a bit more kind of comprehensive application. And this should be an application, or it should. Our focus is to make it really easy to write applications like this.
Yeah.
For example, in this application, this is just plain Java. It's running on the server side. You don't have to design any communication between browser and the server to write this. Even things like loading more data from the server while scrolling, these are totally automated.
Yeah.
You could actually run the same apps on mobile as well. I don't know if, let's see if I can get this to run on mobile.
Yeah.
I mean,
and really one of the benefits, in my opinion, of having everything in Java, and for example this application, is when you're building larger applications, enterprise applications, is that having all of your code base in a language like Java, where it's a lot easier for you to refactor that code, work with it, maintain it, also just in addition to building it quickly. So it's not just productivity while you're building the application, but also productivity in the longer run.
Yeah, so basically the same app runs on any mobile device as directly. Let's put this one off. So let's get back to the presentation. Yeah, actually there is the same dashboard app run as is on iPad. Of course, this is quite compatible with iPad in a such sense that the layouts fit iPad screen. If you want to run this same on, let's say, iPhone, it runs, but automatically it doesn't kind of transform your layouts. You have to take different screen sizes into account when you are designing the screens. There are tools for building responsive layouts easily in Vaadin, but this is something that you have to take into account when designing the application. We basically support all the different browsers out there. Vaadin 7, the latest major version of Vaadin, we support everything up to IE 8 and all the modern browsers, of course, all the mobile platforms.
Well, up from IE 8.
Yeah, up from up from IE 8. We are still supporting also older version of Vaadin, Vaadin 6, that even supports IE 6 and 7. So basically the coverage on the browser side is really wide. Another thing in Vaadin about the UI component is that there is also Vaadin directory. This is kind of repository of third-party UI components and other components as well. And this kind of shows that there is a really wide and active community around Vaadin. This is an open source framework anyways, and that kind of enables the community to contribute back.
Yeah, and I also think it's a pretty good showcase for how easy it is to create these reusable components with Vaadin, which kind of helps you speed along the development process.
Yeah, that's true, and Vaadin is quite typically used in enterprise settings, and in those settings it is often a good idea that to have one team to build reusable components for the whole enterprise. So you don't have to kind of distribute those outside of your own teams and own company, but there is having a nice open source community around. It's great to have hundreds and hundreds of components in the directory. It's also a good showcase why it's a bad idea to put everything in framework core. So there are components like paper stack. This is one of my favorites. This is a pretty old component. But it kind of shows that not all the UI components are good ideas to begin with. I mean, this is a layout component where you can put UI components on sticky notes, and you can tear those sticky notes away. And I don't know how or why somebody would be using this, but it also kind of showcases that the packaging mechanism is pretty strong. I mean, to use this component, you just need a couple of lines of Java code, but inside the components there are tons and tons of HTML5 magic to calculate those round shadows and around the component, to duplicate DOM on the fly and do that kind of stuff on all the different supported browsers. And by encapsulating this in a component that's basically a jar file, one part of the team can create the component, the rest of the team can use it. And use is as easy as kind of cut and pasting POM definition from the directory or downloading a jar file. So those are UI components. Themes, right now it's a pretty exciting topic for us. We just released a new release of Vaadin 7.3 last Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And this includes something really exciting for theming. I mean, previously we had quite okay themes. This is really nice this is a theme called Reindeer. It's still packaged in the product. It's pretty good for boring business applications. I mean, this looks like something you want to run inside a bank or insurance companies. There are other themes as well, even like themes that can be customized by choosing colors and so forth. But most of the cases, people want to make totally customized themes. For example, this one is just a reindeer theme with some custom CSS on top of it. The challenge is that kind of building that kind of customized theme is quite hard. I mean, just some CSS is a
understatement.
It's quite an understatement. You need quite a bit of CSS skills to make it happen. So if you look outside of Vaadin, we had a bit embarrassing story in a year ago or so. We were it's a bit more than a year ago. But anyways, we were preparing a new release of Vaadin TouchKit, and we wanted to kind of make it pixel to pixel identical to iOS 6. And we were pretty successful in that, so it looks exactly like iOS 6. And then Apple kind of changed their visual guidelines quite a bit, so it looked outdated from the beginning. And at the same time, customers were asking that, hey, I'm having this and that other mobile device, and I should kind of conform to those UI guidelines as well. And it was challenging to kind of build different looks easily. I mean, button is just a button, but how the button looks like it can make a huge difference on how your application looks like. And design trends are changing. First there were like heavy shadows, and then like flat design, and now kind of combination of those. And you don't want to kind of build everything from scratch and write thousands of lines of CSS in order to kind of jump between these designs. And it's not just like one button. It's normally you have to kind of make some mock-ups for your customer. You want to kind of show that, hey, this app is going to be looking like that, and then the customer says, hey, isn't this a bit light? And then you make another mock-up, and hey, it says, oh, it looks ugly. I don't want to have this heavy gray stuff over there. And then you make that blue and then put the different gradients and corners over there, and you kind of have a discussion with the customer what he likes and what he wants. In this kind of discussion, you might still be able to, with the kind of relatively okay effort, theme this one login dialog for the customer. But when it kind of comes up to like full applications where you have like tons and tons and tons, hundreds of different UI components, different views, it becomes super expensive to kind of go through and theme all of these. It's not just like colors or fonts. There are so many tiny details that kind of build this whole look and feel.
And you want it to be coherent throughout the entire application.
Exactly. So if it looks like a bit flat on that end of the application and a bit rounded on that end of the application, it's not going to be working.
Users will notice.
Yeah. So what we came up with was kind of Valo SASS-based Valo style engine. So the idea is that instead of writing CSS directly, we modularize the theme in such a way that there are high-level parameters. Parameter like roundness throughout the whole application, parameter like depth, and that kind of stuff. And then with just handful of parameters, you can completely change the look and feel of the whole theme. So with this Valo, you can generate different kind of look and feels real fast. And if you have the kind of general overall look and feel right, and your customer likes it, then you can kind of deep dive in and customize any part of the theme, detail by detail, and it's really powerful. Another thing in Valo is that we got rid of all the pixels in the theme. I mean, new devices, they tend to have these high-resolution displays, and showing a picture on your UI, it tends to look suboptimal nowadays. So instead there are font icons everywhere, and it's scalable from a couple of pixels to hundreds
exactly.
of pixels.
That's the challenge, is scalability really to different resolutions. So with the previous reindeer theme, you might notice sometimes on different devices that there are some, like if you try to zoom in or something, which is something that is taken care of by this approach.
Also, those small images in the theme, they've made changing colors and changing the feeling really hard. Now everything is just vectorized. So this basically is what Valo is all about. I think it's easier to kind of show it in live how it looks like. So believe it or not, this is the Valo application, a couple of screens of the same application. So you can really kind of, or Valo theme demo application. Let's look at it live. So this is a simple demo where you can have different kind of components on the screen. There are tons of details. So if you want to see text field, there are maybe 20 different text field styles that you can use. But the cool thing over here is that you can change the theme on the fly. So this is the default. Then you can make it look like a blueprint, or make it flat, or maybe a bit more Windows-like, or let's see, a bit more, I think this is a like Photoshop style or something like that. Yeah. So, and you can try these high-level parameters on your own application really easily. Markus will show this later on.
I'll show you in just a few minutes.
But you can also go to vaadin.com/Valo and take a look of these examples by yourself and play with these components built into the demo.
Yep.
Okay, so where were we? Oh, the third thing about the components. So data components, Vaadin have been built from beginning in a way that all the UI components, they have data bindings, and we have really simple data binding model. Either you bind to property, that's basically single value, or bunch of values called item, or container, that's basically like list of these items, and that's it. So for any UI component you can bind to these interfaces. Either you implement them by yourself or you use any of the existing implementations. Some of the interfaces, they have a bit more detailed optional interfaces that you can implement, like hierarchies and that kind of stuff. And there are quite a few implementations out there. So basically those are the three components that we have in Vaadin. The second kind of key principle in Vaadin is how we communicate between server and the client, how we kind of combine server and client programming models. So traditionally web apps look like this. So you have a backend server, you have a web server, a communication layer, and JavaScript based UI. So we could kind of call this client side UI, kind of built out of 3 layers. The server side UIs, they are built fully on the server side. So basically in those cases, the client side layer are fully automated. So you don't have to write those at all. Traditionally, if you're building something in JavaScript or let's say AngularJS, you would be having to write all these 4 layers. So you have to design these, you have to write these, you have to maintain these. With GWT, you can basically do the same, but you can write the client side layer in Java instead of JavaScript. In Vaadin, the thing is that you can actually write the whole application in just 2 layers on the server side. But if you want to, you can also add your stuff onto the client side layers as well. But the kind of big implication over here is that when you compare these 2 approaches, you can basically see that in a server-side approach, you only have 1 layer on the UI. On the client-side approach, you have basically 3 layers. And this having to write 1 layer or 3 layers, it has a huge impact on the size of the code that basically translates quite directly to development time and maintenance time.
Yep.
So I think this is the big thing in Vaadin. Great UX through nice UI components, and then lot of productivity kind of provided by this quite unique way of writing UIs.
Yep.
Quick peek how this magic is done. So basically if you write a piece of code, this is just Java running on the server side, you define 2 components, add these on the layout, and then add a kind of any kind of click list or anything to those components. How this translates to web. So basically when you open this application on a web browser, what happens is that your browser goes to the server side, to Vaadin servlet, and downloads a bunch of HTML and JavaScript. And the good side of the story is that this JavaScript and HTML is provided by the framework. It's not written by you. Another side of the story is that this is a one-time download. So even if your application would be huge, you only download this around 100 to maybe 300k of JavaScript, depending on how many widgets you are using. And out comes a UI on the screen. So when you click this or interact with the UI, you actually send a request back to the server side, basically describing what you did, those actions that you did. And this gets routed back to your code. So you get this event on the server side Java code, where you can modify the UI as you wish. And basically then Vaadin analyzes the changes, sends these over the wire, and shows these on the screen. So the whole communication is fully automated. But I think this is it's much easier to kind of see in practice.
I think before going there, it would be nice if we just grabbed our first question from the forum.
Yeah, sure.
So basically, the question is on performance and chattiness of a server-side framework versus just a client-side JavaScript framework, for example. Do you just have a couple of words that you'd like to?
Yeah, this is a fair question that always comes in first into mind about this. Hey, don't you go over the wire quite often? Yes, we do. The good side of the story is that the communication is really kind of compact. You send tiny packages over the wire, you receive tiny packages over the wire. So it's actually pretty lightweight. When you compare this to client-side application, where you have built all the UI logic on the client side, in the end of the day, you also go over the wire to fetch some data to show that on the screen. Of course, you can do much more optimizations when you handwrite all the logic on the client side. So that is going to be more effective in most of the time than having a server-side framework. But the difference is not that big actually in practical cases. And in some cases, it can be even unintuitively in a such way that the server-side framework is more effective, because it's pretty easy from a client-side framework to trigger an event that takes, let's say, 3 AJAX requests to server side to load something in parallel. While in Vaadin, we always package those events and do all the kind of processing on the server side before sending only one package back. So it can, in some cases, be even more effective.
Excellent. And just as a quick follow-up, there will be a webinar featuring Arun Gupta from Red Hat with Matti Tahvonen from Vaadin discussing scaling with Vaadin.
Yeah, that's going to be next week.
Yeah, it's on September 8th. So there's a sign-up link on vaadin.com for that if you want to kind of dive deeper into this.
Yeah, and their focus will be also quite a bit in WebSockets, how you can have continuous connection between the server and the client and how well it scales in practice.
Yep.
But let's go to the coding part.
Okay, so to just bring things to a little bit more concrete level, I'm going to just create a quick little project and walk you through both the creation of a Vaadin project and kind of explain what goes on when you start working with Vaadin.
So you're working with IntelliJ?
I am working with IntelliJ. We do have plugins for other IDEs like Eclipse and NetBeans.
Yeah, we are pretty agnostic on IDEs.
In this particular instance, I'm just going to be using Maven. So Vaadin has a archetype for building applications. That's just called Vaadin Archetype Application. I'm using the new 7.3 version that we just came out with. So just to start off.
Just going to interrupt. This is just the preference of yours. There is also a built-in Vaadin plugin in IntelliJ that ships right out of the box, and it can also create new projects without Maven archetype.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm just giving the project a name, clicking finish here. Going to tell IntelliJ that it can automatically import all the Maven stuff.
To download all the world.
Download the entire world. So if we take a quick look at what got generated by this archetype, we can look at the source folder here. We can see that we have a Java folder, contains one Java class, and then we have a Vaadin folder here with themes. I'll get to the themes later, but let's look at the Maven project file first. So basically, this just defines the different dependencies to Vaadin, and in this instance, I will be using Java 8 in my project, so I'll go and change that from the default Java 6 that was used in the project. That will automatically reload. In the Java folder here, you can see that we have a widgets file. This is something that you need if you, for example, bring in one of these add-ons that we have in our directory. In this case, since we're working with a very simple application, I won't be needing it, so I'll just delete it for this demo.
Or if you would like to write any client-side Java code that gets compiled to JavaScript, then you would need this.
Yeah. So this class here, UI. The UI class is basically the entry point to your Vaadin application. You can see we have an init method that will get run when the user comes in. For now, I'll get back to the theme in a while. So for now, we're just going to be using the standard Valo theme that was just demonstrated by Jonas.
What I want to kind of say is that basically this is everything. There is no HTML file or JSP or anything like that. This is basically the whole thing.
Yep. And I also deleted the custom widget set from here, otherwise it won't work. So in order for us to run this, we'll need to create a configuration for it. I have Tomcat installed on my computer, so I'll just configure a local instance of Tomcat. We can call it Tomcat. And in order for us to deploy anything, we need to select what artifact we want to have deployed. And we had a question in the forum about using JRebel, so I thought I'd kind of incorporate that into my demo here. So I have the JRebel plugin installed in IntelliJ. This would work exactly the same in Eclipse, for instance. And I will just generate the XML file here, and this will tell JRebel which folders it should
So what
follow.
JRebel does over here, it kind of makes it faster to reload classes. So when Markus writes something and click Save button, you can basically see those changes immediately on the screen. Without JRebel, it might take, in a small application, it might take some seconds. If you have a huge application, it might take a bit more.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll just disable from here is a GWT facet. So IntelliJ saw that widget set file that we just had in there and noticed that we're using GWT, but in this case, since we removed that file, we don't need that. So now we have everything set up and we should be able to run this. Let's see if we can do that. It's always the interesting
Demo
part.
gods, please.
Let's see here. If all goes well, we should be seeing a button here. Excellent. And in order to just show what's going on here, I'm gonna let's delete everything here and start from scratch. So this here is just the skeleton of a Vaadin application. We don't have anything in it, so if I ran this right now, we just have an empty page.
And this servlet is just for deploying, so it just shows that, hey, this goes to the
basically just defines the mapping. This could be in a web XML file as well.
Yeah.
So just to show that everything in Vaadin is basically a component, let's create a new button and add it to this window. So we tell our UI that we want the content of the UI to be a button, let's say, and let's have that button have the text "click me," and that basically
does nothing.
Does nothing right now because we, of course, haven't done what a button does, and that is, of course, telling it what needs to happen when the button actually gets clicked. And what we do here is basically just add a click listener.
Lambda, that looks beautiful.
Yes. So in this case, as you remember, I changed the project Java version to 8, and that means that I'm able to use lambdas here. With earlier versions of Java, you would have just created an anonymous inner class here. And basically, we want something to happen when we click the button. So what I'm going to do is just show a notification saying thanks. So now that we click the button, something actually happens here. And what's nice here is that if we go and change the code and save, without even reloading the page, you can see that the code changes.
That's basically enabled by JRebel.
That's enabled by JRebel, but that also shows that you can achieve this really fast development turnaround.
Yeah, when you combine a kind of compact notation provided by lambdas, by powerful components provided by Vaadin, and have like real fast workflow, it's really simple to kind of start prototyping.
And what's really nice here is that if I put a breakpoint here on this line and click, you can see that it's actually hitting that breakpoint. So if I run into a problem with my code, it's really simple to just use all the tools that I'm used to using, and I can figure out what's going on. since this is actually debugging on the JVM, I can drill down all the way to the root cause of that.
And you have all the full tooling available for JVM, so it's not any kind of emulator or anything like that.
Okay, so that's the basics. Now for the actual demo, what I'm going to show you is just a quick browser for the Vaadin Javadoc files. And as Jonas mentioned, one of the 3 points in Vaadin was, except for the components, we have data sources. So on my computer, I have a folder where I have all the Javadocs, and to access those, I will create a data source. So,
of course, in real application, that would be like JPA type of data source instead of going to file system. But
yeah,
that's Markus. So
hey, I'm an account manager. You can't expect me to. So I have those in a folder called Vaadin here, and let me just make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Let's call that data source. Okay, so that's the first thing we need, is where do we get the data? The second part is, of course, where do we show the data? In this case, let's just use a simple drop-down, and for that we have a component called a combo box. And I don't want it to have a caption, so I'll just use an empty caption and pass it the data source. Let's call it file selector. And finally, in order for us to actually see it in our UI, we need to tell the UI that its content should be the selector.
Basically put the combo box on the screen.
Yeah. And with that done, we should hopefully have a selector. You can see that we have a bunch of HTML files here.
It even has paging and lazy loading
It
right out of the box.
Yeah, but also it doesn't have a lot of functionality. We can select these, but nothing happens.
Yeah.
So kind of the next step of our demo will be, of course, to have something where we can show the content. So for that, let's just use a label.
So basically you have just 2 components of the screen, combo box and label, and you implemented the whole thing with 2 components.
Yeah. So a label is just a component for showing text, and it has different modes. So in this case, since I know the HTML files are HTML, I can tell it that it should be in HTML mode and show the HTML, basically render it. Otherwise it would escape it and wouldn't look very nice. So, okay, so now we have basically something that we can select the file from and something where we can show it. The remaining thing is, of course, hooking up the logic that when we select something, the content should be shown. So the way we do that is that we add a value change listener, basically telling the selector, whenever your value changes, do this. And what we want to do is basically tell the label to set its property data source. This is the property, is the single value. And as the value, we want to get the value of the file selector. And the problem we have right now is that the content of the UI can only be one component, but now we have 2 components. So in order for us to show both these components, we need to put them in what we call a layout. In this case, I just want them to be stacked on top of each other, so I'm just going to add them to a vertical layout. And like that. So hopefully, if the demo gods are kind to me, we'll be able to see the files here.
So this is like quite a simple way of browsing the docs. I mean, it's not much yet.
Yeah, but well, first of all, the combo box isn't probably the best component now that I think of it. So maybe we should change that to something that's a little bit more legible. So let's take advantage of the fact that most of the Vaadin components follow a very similar API and inherit from the same classes. So if I wanted to change that combo box into a table, that's fairly simple. So now I get a much better look of what we have.
Could you even put a tree or tree table over there?
I could, yes.
So now you get also the kind of directories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now this still isn't very nice. I can't select anything because normally if you just have a table you use it to browse stuff, so we need to tell it that it's selectable. Also, it's right now it's using up kind of a lot of space here, and when I scroll down it goes out of the screen. So what I'm gonna do here is use a vertical split panel instead. So basically I'll give both our components half the screen and have them scroll within their own respective areas.
Could you fix that layout? It looks a bit strange.
Yeah. So this is one of the kind of first things you'll probably run into with Vaadin when regarding layouts, is that components have sizes that are separate from the sizes of the kind of slots in the layout that they have. So in this case, I want to have this table take up all the space available to it. So
that's also one of the powerful things in Vaadin, that the layouting is really simple. You just kind of tell the Vaadin layouting system what you want to get done, and it takes care of the browser differences. And this is actually not that simple thing to do without layout managers.
So now we have a fairly functional way of browsing Vaadin Java docs. What I want to do next is enable you to edit these.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for you to see the kind of the modularity and easy to use component, or basically writing new components, we said everything in Vaadin is basically a component. So let's take advantage of that. So
basically when you are writing new Vaadin applications, what you are actually doing all the time is you're writing new components. They might be like composites of existing components, but anyway, so that's kind of way to encapsulate things.
So I'll create a new Java class, and I will extend a tab sheet. So basically I will have two tabs here. I will have one for the actual editor and one where I'll show the source code of that HTML file. And by extending tab sheet, I'm basically creating my own customized version of tab sheet, if you will. So let's just create a constructor here. And for the components that we need, we'll need a rich text area, which will be the editor. Let's call this, give it a caption. And then to show the source, we'll need, again, a label. It doesn't need any content, but this time, because we're showing code, I'll use the pre-formatted value here. And I'll give it a caption so you can see source. Okay, so basically I've added, or actually I didn't add, I need to add. So I created a tab sheet and I added two components to it.
Yeah.
And what I want to do now is change this one label that I had for just showing the content to this editor. And as you can see now, the new class doesn't have a set property data source, so I'll just use the auto generate functionality in the IDE to generate that method. And instead of just setting the labels property data source to that text file, I'll now use that to bind it to both these components.
So basically you implement the same standard API in your editor that was implemented by label.
Exactly. So basically now we changed the label to this editor, and we passed along the same file that we had to both those components. And now you can see that we have this rich text editor here, so I can change the font or
so that's basically editing the HTML file.
And we also have a view of the source behind. And since we have the split panel here, we're able to get some more space for our source viewing.
So that, I guess, should demonstrate that it's actually pretty fast to write interactive applications with Vaadin. I mean, if you would be building this out of DOM elements and writing everything from scratch in JavaScript and integrating maybe third-party components for rich text editing, it's gonna be taking more time than this.
So you were going to show the visual designer. I think we're maybe running a little bit low on time.
Maybe I'll give a quick peek. So it's just to kind of show that there is also another way of building these. So if you happen to be running Eclipse, you can just create a new composite component. So Markus was doing editor, and okay, there is something wrong with my Eclipse. So maybe I don't fight with this. Go on with the demo.
Okay. So what I still wanted to show you is now we were just using the plain Valo theme. What I wanted to show you is really what the strength of that theme is, and that is with the parameters. So if we go into this theme that was generated by the archetype, you can see that there are a bunch of commented out lines showing you some examples of what parameters you might be able to change. And really, the beauty here is that the SASS theme uses these as a base for computation. So just by changing one parameter, let's make the background of our application dark gray. You will see that this actually propagates to every single component.
It even changes the font to light color from.
Yeah. So you can see that there was a huge change in how this application looks by just me changing one line.
And what happened, why it took a bit of time, is that we have built-in SASS compiler that actually compiles all the theme files. Even though it looked like it took like a second or so, it's at the moment it's the fastest compiler out there. So even faster than the SASS-lang compiler that we were kind of re-implementing.
So this is really great for development. Of course, when you're in production, you'll pre-compile this one, so your users won't get this lag. So if you generate a new project, you'll get a link here in the comments to different examples. We can just take one quick example from here. Let's select dark theme here, for example. So just by pasting in these 10 or so lines of parameters, we should be able to kind of change the look of this application quite significantly. So you can see the fonts are different, the highlight colors are different, we have some roundness in our corners, and basically everything changed.
Yeah.
So this is a really quick way of making a professional looking, really coherent looking theme for your application. So you can save, literally I'd say, weeks.
Could you take another example? This blueprint is pretty cool. That's my favorite. But these are just examples. So there are tons of documentation, both in Book of Vaadin as well as API documentation, where you can kind of see all the parameters.
Yep.
So now it looks more like a wireframe.
Yeah. And as you can see, we didn't change anything in the Java code. There's a kind of a very strict separation between the presentation layer or the visual layer and your actual definition of the.
And this is also handy if somebody asks you later on, why didn't you write wireframes for this UI before implementing it? You can kind of go back and print out the wireframes with this.
Okay, but I think in order to keep our webinar short, let's.
Actually, what I could show first is that it seems that there was just some problem in Eclipse. What I wanted to show is that you can actually build new UI components just by drag and dropping things. So you could, Markus had tab seed over there, I could drag and drop this on the screen. Let's say, make it a bit larger. And you had rich text area, like this, and you had some other text area as well. So you can basically build UI by drag and dropping. And this is just editing source code, so it actually edited or built the same source code more or less that Markus was writing by hand. Okay. So these were the kind of two first kind of fundamentals in Vaadin. Everything is a component, and that the server client programming model is really powerful and saving tons of time. The third thing is also huge, but it's done by others. We are building on top of Java platform, and Java platform is great. So it basically means that first off, you can use any language that works on JVM. So you can write Vaadin apps, Vaadin UIs in Scala or Groovy or whatever is your choice. There are tons of languages. So this is super powerful in a way that, and you get this benefit for free. As I mentioned, it works on basically all the different browsers without any installation, so there is no requirement to have any client-side Java or anything like that. It basically deploys on anything that can run Java, any servlet container, any portal, most clouds. You can use any tooling for Java. I mean, this is just plain old Java classes on a real JVM. So everything that applies to Java applies to Vaadin as well. We support all the major IDEs, Eclipse, IntelliJ, NetBeans. All of these have plugins for Vaadin that help in development, or you could just use whatever text editor you're using and use any build tools that you like. We support most of these. One kind of huge thing is that because you're writing server-side Java code, you have direct access to the server side. So you can call any server-side APIs directly. And the difference between calling from the client side, where you have to build asynchronous callbacks and design web services and design how these get authenticated and so forth, from what we can do in Vaadin, just make a synchronous method call and expect to get some values back right away from the backend. It's huge. And this is where most of the power lies in Vaadin. Okay, that's basically was the intro. I just want to give quick pointers on what we have been working on lately. So let's browse these through really quick. Vaadin 7, it was the largest release we have ever had. We added tons of, we kind of modernized Vaadin, as we have over 10 years of history behind us. Now we want to add a lot of modern stuff inside Vaadin directly. Just a couple of pointers there. First of all, we included full of Google Web Toolkit directly inside Vaadin. So skip this. So basically, you can combine the server-side productivity with the client-side control. So you can write always everything in Java, but if you want to kind of fine-tune some details on the client side, you can do that also in Java. This also kind of leads to interesting topic called hybrid apps. Clearly in server-side application, you cannot write things like offline mode. But if you can write things on the client side as well, you could kind of extend those applications and basically combine the benefits of both client-side programming model as well as server-side programming model to kind of hybrid application where you can write most of the stuff on the server side, enjoy the productivity benefits of the server side, and maybe implement a small subset of the application on the client side in the same application, so you can get benefit of the both. There is one example of this you can try out yourself called parking demo. Actually, I can kind of quickly show this demo. So I just launched that on phone. It has things like mapping and typical stuff you see on mobile applications. So this is just server-side Java Vaadin application. And the thing is that if you go to offline, let's say we click that, hey, we are on airplane mode, it should stop working, right? In here, what happens is that Vaadin detects that it's now on an offline mode. It hides all the server-side functionality and only shows views that are implemented on the client side. So you can still keep using these views. UI components work, or the client-side logic works, and you can kind of keep using the application until you get back to place where you can go online. And then this application detects that, hey, Now we are back online, we have some data on the client side, and we should synchronize this with the server. And it synchronizes. Go try it by yourself. I don't want to say that this is the easiest thing to do, because merging data from client to the server side always takes quite a bit of application-specific planning, but it's possible to do. One of the things in Vaadin 7 was completely redesigned communication, where we have really elegant way of connecting client-side widgets to server-side UI components. The big thing over there is state, where basically you can pass the values from the server to client just by changing the state of the server. It's automatically reflected to the client side. I don't go into details, but basically you can write remote procedure calls from server to client or client to server real easy with one class. You can write this in Java. You can also write this in JavaScript.
Yeah.
So basically you can take any existing JavaScript widget out there and integrate it real easily with Vaadin. There is even like kind of built-in wrapper in Vaadin that can be used to kind of wrap around these existing components, called abstract JavaScript component. So you just start using that, and you can basically use any JavaScript component in Vaadin directly. One thing that we added is server push. So traditionally Vaadin have been using just Ajax for all the communications. Now by adding one annotation in your application, basically write add push on top of your or on front of your UI class, it enables push connection. And this is real fancy, because this is the only change you have to make to your application. Everything kind of goes through the push connection after that. And it's not only just by some push connection, it actually detects the network conditions. What kind of server you are using, what kind of browser you are using, is there some proxy between these, and chooses the best working push implementation. Of course, it would like to use WebSockets where they're available, but there are fallbacks when WebSockets are not available. So it kind of makes it work even in the scenarios that you cannot use WebSockets for some reason. And this is totally automated. We also added built-in responsive design helpers, so that you can actually define component level responsive CSS for your application. So typically when people say responsive, they think about media queries, and media queries, they work fine for web pages, but for applications with reusable components, you cannot always bind everything to this width of the whole web page.
Yep.
In Vaadin, you can also bind or kind of choose CSS based on the width of the specific component inside that UI. So I guess these are some of the kind of things that I'm excited about in what we have been doing recently. Some pointers to get started with Vaadin. So first of all, there are good tutorials on vaadin.com. Go and take a look at those. If you are using Eclipse, you can go to your Eclipse, inside your Eclipse, choose Marketplace and click Vaadin plugin, and it's like one-click install, and after that you can start using Vaadin. In IntelliJ, it's actually even better. If you happen to have the commercial edition IntelliJ, it's built in right out of when you have been installing it. In NetBeans, you have to download Vaadin plugin from NetBeans plugin portal. If you're using Maven, you can create a new project out of an archetype with this kind of Maven notation, a bit kind of verbose in this. So I would prefer to use some idea for this. One of the kind of coolest things about how to get started with Vaadin is that there is a really nice documentation. It's free. So there is a full book about Vaadin. You can go to vaadin.com/book, download it as EPUB or HTML, or just browse it online. And it basically explains you everything about Vaadin. Everything that we missed from this webinar is written out there.
And like I said, if you browse the sampler and you find a component, it will have a link to the right place in this book as well. So you can get a lot more information.
Yeah, and of course there are Java docs and so forth, but I think book is a good way of getting a really nice overview and kind of comprehensive look into Vaadin. as we mentioned, this is Apache licensed, so it's fully free for any kind of applications. There is a huge community around it. It's really hard to actually estimate because you don't have to register, you don't have to tell us that you are using Vaadin, but our estimates are somewhere north of 100,000.
Yeah.
If you are wondering who's using Vaadin, there are tons of companies around the world. So I think at the moment, out of Fortune 100 companies, 40 are using Vaadin. It's used both in big companies, small companies. If you want to see some specific examples, you can go to vaadin.com. There is a page called Who is using Vaadin. There are some cases that you can take a look of, or you can just browse through some logos, or you can choose some cases based by industry or search. So there is it's actually a pretty interesting resource to go through. We are also publishing a magazine called Doc. So this is a full magazine showcasing different use cases of Vaadin. So you can download this for free as well from vaadin.com. Or you could meet us in different events. The largest event that we have been arranging is GWT Create Conference. Next one is coming up on January. We are arranging that is in Mountain View here in California, as well as in Munich in Germany. So you're welcome over there. You can go to gwtcreate.com to read more about it. We are super active on different events as well, so this is just some of the events coming up this month. Here in US, I think these are the core events that are coming up next.
Especially like to just mention both Java 1 and Life Ray Symposium coming up within the next month. We are arranging meetups with both of these. So there are Vaadin meetups, so if you're happen to be around San Francisco or Boston at those times, just go to our website and sign up for the meetups. I'll be there, and it'd be really nice to meet all of you. So
we have expo booth on this as well. So it's really, please come and chat.
Yeah.
And I guess we still have some questions. We are a bit running out of time, but that's good point. So we still had one more thing over here.
I think you're overselling it now.
Yeah, it's kind of reserved still.
So anyway, I just wanted to give a quick mention of what Vaadin does provide on
for
top
living.
Yeah, and what Vaadin provides on top of the awesome free framework that we have. Like Jonas mentioned, we have the add-ons. So there's the directory contains hundreds and hundreds of user contributed add-ons. On top of this, we have something we call Pro Tools. So these are specific tools for things like charting or creating mobile applications that Vaadin makes available. We do training. So if you got interested about using Vaadin in your project and you want to train your team before starting with a project, you can let us know and we'll help you with that. We offer different support and service packages as well. So the different Pro Tools we have are TestBench, TouchKit, and Charts. TestBench is a really, really nice tool for writing actual full-stack UI tests for regression testing, for example, where you can actually exercise your full application through the browser. And basically, this allows you to create JUnit tests that you can have running on your CI server and minimize the amount of manual testing that you need to do. TouchKit, you briefly saw this in the parking demo. This is basically a additional set of components for Vaadin that allows you to make applications that look and feel very native on mobile devices. It also gives you access to some of the mobile APIs, like for geolocation, and
it also makes like offline mode, writing offline mode easier on mobile.
And Vaadin Charts, which is a really nice looking library for creating data visualizations. You saw it in the dashboard demo live, so you'll have really rich HTML based graphics that you can interact with and just visualize your data in a very nice way. So for the different support options that we offer for companies and people using Vaadin, we have either a more hands-off kind of expertise on demand solution, basically different levels of support. These work in much like a issue tracker. So if you run into a question, you're not sure of how to implement something, you can just give that question to us and have a Vaadin expert who's probably done it several times before talk to you for 15 minutes and figure out what the best way of accomplishing that would be, or if you happen to run into a problem and you're unable to figure out a solution, you can have us help with it.
Or you can even ask us to, hey, could you guys implement this thing for us, as we are busy and this is something that is out of our expertise.
And for more hands-on things that we do for consulting is, for example, a proof of concept. So if you think Vaadin might be a good solution for your project, but you don't want to invest fully into it before you actually know that it will be able to handle the use cases you have, we could spend some time on building a proof of concept before you go through all the training and stuff. We do project kickstarts where we have a Vaadin expert joining your team for anywhere for a couple of days to maybe a week or two, and just set up the foundation. So make sure that you have all the best practices in use and you get integrated with all your systems that you have.
That's also a really nice way of kind of learning and making sure that the whole team is doing the right things from the beginning.
And then from there on out, it's basically anything that we can do to help your Vaadin project succeed. So
yeah, so basically I think to summarize, the framework itself is fully free, and you can go and download free book of Vaadin, and you are totally fine without us. But what we do, and we have a 80-person team behind Vaadin framework, and so what we do is basically do anything that you need as a help to build nice web UIs and kind of making sure that your application project really succeeds. So just give us a call, and we probably are able to help you, even though if you didn't mention it right here, what we could do for you.
Exactly.
I think we are running a bit out of time, or a bit more than a bit.
Yeah.
So it might be better that we answer your questions online on the forum thread instead of, because we had a handful of questions that we haven't answered yet.
You want to change the screen just so people can see our
that's
contact
true.
details?
Right here.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching, and
Thanks.
At any time give us a ping, tell us what you think, how you kind of are using Vaadin, and if there is anything where we can help, we would be happy to be of help. Thanks.
Thanks.